My husband somehow found out about my affair. He told me to never come back and was now planning more. Help, guys. I've gotten in trouble with my husband. He somehow found out about my affair and threw me out of his house and said he doesn't want to see my face again in his life. I thought that would be the end of it, but my husband is now planning something, and I've come seeking help because I have no idea what to do to placate my husband. My life is about to fall into ruins. It has already, but things aren't looking up for me. Why did I have an affair when I was already married to my husband, you might be wondering. I did it because I couldn't resist. It was like a spell, trust me guys, and I couldn't bring myself to stop because the D*** had been huge and good. It was nothing like the sex my husband gave to me, and I got a little hooked. Now my husband found out and my life is totally over. I hadn't known he would find out. I was sure I had been careful, but somehow he caught me and I can't placate him. Let me tell you how this all happened. My name is Lauren and I'm 28 years old. My husband's name is Richard and he's 33 years old. I know this is kind of surreal, but my husband and I actually met on Tinder 4 years ago. I said it would be surreal because how many times do we all get to meet a real Tinder couple? Even though my husband is after my life now, LOL. Anyway, we had met on the popular dating platform and he fit all my descriptions to the T, to the point I was suspecting he was a catfish because of how easily it was to swipe right on his profile. I had never even planned to join Tinder in the first place, but my social life was a mess, and I had just gone through one of the worst breakups in the history of breakups, and I didn't have any friends on my end of Connecticut, so it was either join a dating platform, meet up with new men, have a few drinks with them, and even maybe remain friends with them, than drown my depression in alcohol. I was too young to already be an alcoholic, so I had gone the better route, and that's how I had met my husband. I had DM'd him hoping he wasn't going to be a catfish, and he wasn't, so we hit it off right away. Luckily, he was just 40 minutes away, with him staying at New Haven while I had been residing at Hartford. So we hung out on weekends and whenever we had the free time. I was studying business statistics and in my 3rd year at the University of Hartford, while he had been rounding up his master's degree in something I can't remember at the moment, but I can remember it was at Yale University. We had been spontaneous and loved going on adventures. One weekend, while we were still seeing each other, he took me on a hike on the East Rock Loop Trail. It was a fun experience, one I wouldn't relive again because hiking is hard, who would have thought? But it had been worth it because that's when he had asked me to be his girlfriend. In front of the setting sun, while we had been on our way back to the hike starting point, he had asked me out. It was romantic and sweet. That was who my husband was before I had cheated on him and he had found out. He had been everything I needed in a man. Well, everything except giving good S***. He asked me to marry him once I was done with school, and that's how I had moved to New Haven to be with him. I had been married to him for 2 years plus, and he hadn't been anything but sweet and kind. I would have never guessed he had this side to him. The side that wanted to ruin my life and make sure I had nothing to go on by. It was so shocking to witness that side of my husband. But I guess I had set the trap for myself. I could have stayed content. There was nothing this man didn't do to please me, and maybe that got stuck in my subconscious that I could do anything and get away with it when it came to him. I mean, it had happened before and he hadn't batted an eye. No, I hadn't cheated on him before. I meant I had done something that he was meant to bat an eye at, and he didn't even do much as blink to it. We had gone to his friend's dinner party, and basically my husband had been the only one to come with his significant other. The rest had been single men, hoping to have a good drink and catch up with each other. No, I hadn't been the only girl, if that's what you're thinking, but they had just been flings to the men. I was the only one with a giant rock on my ring finger. He hadn't given me any restraints or warnings, so I had made friends with almost half of the men invited to the party. I was a free spirit, talking, chatting, doing whatnot, and my husband didn't bat an eye. At first, I had thought it wasn't a problem, but then when I had gone to the restroom to freshen up at the dinner party, I had heard one of the flings say that I was unhinged and flirting with almost all the men there while I had a rock on my finger, that they were sure my husband was going to lay into me when we got home. My eyes had widened at the thought of my husband shouting at me, so for the rest of the night, I had tried to stick to his side till we went home. We got home, and just like the girls, I had been expecting my husband to shout at my behavior. But he had just asked how I had enjoyed the party and if I wanted anything before going to bed. I was as shocked as you are reading this. I thought maybe I hadn't heard well that night, but the next morning he was just as sweet and loving. So why did I have an affair with another man if my husband was what most women were communing with their gods for? My honest answer, I met a guy with a huge dick. It wasn't supposed to happen, and I feel extremely remorseful. My husband and I had quarreled one day over my place of work. Apparently, my husband wasn't happy with the fact that I was working. Yes, in this 21st century, he didn't want me working. Like, who does that nowadays? I really don't know where his thought had come from. He just woke up one morning unprovoked and said I should quit my job. Okay, the whole talk started up from children. Yes, he wanted me to start thinking of having children, and I was cool with it. I was excited even. We had been married for 2 years plus, and we had had our fun as lit married couples, so I was ready to start popping out a few mini-me's. Then he had brought up the subject of work, and how he wanted me to give in my notice at work so I could focus on being a housewife and meal prepping and all that BS. Can you imagine that? I should stop working and become a housewife. I loved working. I loved my job. Well, I had told my husband no, and that had ensued in a fight. He told me he didn't know what had gotten into me, and it was probably all the men I was with thinking I could defy. You guys, I was shook because my husband had never been like this. Getting jealous of other men, shouting at me, telling me to quit my job. He had never done any of that. So I was shocked and worried, and I made the worst mistake. I went for drinks at the bar after work. My husband and I had never had any major arguments since we had met. That was one of the reasons I had been attracted to him in the first place. He is an easygoing guy, so imagine with this argument where he had even slammed the door or on me and told me how he expected to see my resignation letter in a few days, or he would get me fired himself. That was the case. There's no need to even imagine. I was surprised at his change of character, so instead of going home the night after the argument, I took my frustrations at him to the bar and drank till I couldn't see clearly. Very foolish of me because I'm someone who gets drunk at the slightest bit of alcohol. Basically, all I had to drink that night was just 2 shots, and I was already blabbing like a fool. Then a man in shining armor came to my rescue after I was done with my antics and offered to take me home. His name was Harry. Did you guys know God was damn biased when he was figuring out the relationship between me and alcohol? Tell me why I couldn't control myself when I got drunk, but I could remember everything that happened when I was drunk down to little details like the smell of the environment. I remember telling the hot-looking hunk of a man that I didn't want to go home and that I wanted to follow him to his place. We got to his place, and no, I didn't fall asleep and go home the next morning like I was supposed to. I stayed awake like a cat in heat, and I was giving the guy all the obvious sex signs, and he took me up on my offer. And it was good. His D*** hit all the right spots, and it was unlike the S** my husband and I ever had. It was mind-blowing and magical, and I got hooked. It was supposed to be a one-night thing. You guys shouldn't come at me. I knew I had laid the trap for myself, but I got a little too addicted to the D***, and I went back after the first time. Don't come for me, guys. I know I got myself into the mess, but it was so irresistible, and my husband was proving to be the weapon fashioned against me. Trust me when I say I had tried to stop, but I always found myself going back to Harry for more. I kept on going back to escape my husband's problems, and the fact that engaging in co**T**s with him was so magical because of his huge D***. It became an affair. I kept going back to him at the slightest chance. After work, we'd meet together for a quick session at his place. During the weekend, when I would tell my husband that I was going to fix up my hair or my nails, I would go to meet up with my affair. We weren't a couple or anything like that. I had made it clear that what my affair and I had was plainly S***. I only went to him for the sex, and he knew it, so he gave it just the way I wanted it. Thorough and hot. We continued our arrangement for over 2 months, and I was sure my husband would never find out. To be frank, my husband began getting on my nerves. He still hammered that I quit my job, and he was giving me till the end of 2 months to resume duties as a housewife, or he was going to storm into my office. Don't get me wrong, he was still sweet and caring, but it was now overshadowed by a side that I hadn't known was there. I guess that excuse was what appealed to my subconscious as to why I was having an affair with someone I had randomly met at the bar. But I knew deep down that the reason I kept going back was because my husband couldn't offer what he had in the S** department. He wasn't even close up. My affair didn't know I was married, and he knew to expect nothing more from me other than sex. I loved my husband, and I know I shouldn't have been having an affair while married to him. But I was hooked on goodness **** and couldn't quit it. I bought him things and took him out. I guess you could say I was like his sugar mummy LOL. I didn't know if he was older than me or I was older than him. Quite frankly, I couldn't care less, and I didn't bother asking him. I didn't want to know anything about him, and he never volunteered to share, so we kept it that way. We slept together after work, and I never had any thoughts or feelings except in bed thoughts about my lover. I didn't quit my job either, so it was a hassle between my husband and I. We went back and forth with arguments almost every night, and you guys won't believe that this man had the audacity to show up to my work and demand that I be fired. Like, who does that? His whole demeanor just diminished in front of my eyes at what he did. The back and forth continued between us because I didn't quit my job, and his secondhand embarrassment just ended up with him getting a restraining order from my company. Luckily, one day he stopped confronting me about quitting my job and everything became normal once again. However, I still kept on with my affair. I was careful. My whereabouts were carefully planned and backed up, and my husband mostly never asked where I was after my work hours. So I happily had my affair on the side, but I didn't know I was going to be found out. I guess I became a little carefree and certain that my husband wouldn't catch me, that I didn't consider the fact that my affair wouldn't be happy that he was sleeping with a married woman. This was the stepping stone, or should the plunging stone to my downfall. This action I had taken was the beginning step to my husband finding out that I had an affair. I had gone to see my affair with my wedding ring still on because I had forgotten to take it off after work. I was tired and frustrated from work, and I just needed my one addiction to calm me down. I went to his place, and after a bout of playing in the sheets, there was no playing involved, he made me lunch. It was as we were eating that he noticed the pretty rock on my finger and asked why I was wearing a diamond ring on my ring finger. I had always been a terrible liar from the beginning of time, so I could tell him that I just loved the feel of diamond rings on my hand, but he would have seen through that lie. Of course, I told him the truth. He knew very well we never had a future together, so I told him I was married. And I did it rather haughtily, like, I'm married, what you going to do about it? After that, we are in silence, and I thought that was that. But no, it wasn't even close. The next day, I discovered my affair had moved out from his old place, and he wasn't taking my calls again. I didn't know there were still good men in this world who didn't like the idea of sleeping with another's property. I had thought men would sleep with anything as long as it was a warm, snug female body. I tried calling my affair over the next 2 weeks, but it was to no avail. My first mistake had caused me to lose the benefits of a huge D*** and good S***. I didn't stop in my search to find him because, as I said, I couldn't quit my addiction like that. So I hired a private investigator. A second mistake. The private investigator came up with nothing. It was like my lover had vanished without a trace. Poof, into thin air he went. I gave up and told him I wouldn't need his services anymore. Apparently, 2 weeks later, the PI came back with new information and he met my husband at our house. Why hadn't the dimwit just called me? Well, the PI had found my lover, and when my husband asked him what he was doing in his home, and told he was going to call the police on him if he didn't spill his motives of being in his house. The PI went on to tell him I had hired him to find someone. And yes, I knew this because the PI had reported to me about how he had encountered my husband at my house. The dread that filled my lungs when the PI ended the call was palpable. In my head, I had been like there was no way my husband would work that quick and find out about my affair within the space of hours. This was another lie I told myself because not only did my husband work quick, my things were already outside by the time I got back home from work. Yep, my husband had thrown my things out of the house by the evening. I walked into the house and found him seated at the breakfast nook and demanded to know why my things were outside with my heart beating inside my chest. Of course, I knew why my things were outside. I just wanted to confirm what he knew, and my husband laid into me. He screamed that he knew I was sleeping with someone else behind his back, and the person had called him and confirmed that it was true. The person, my affair, had also made sure to add that he didn't know I was already married, and if he had known, he wouldn't have touched me. I didn't know what to do except stand there shocked as he lashed out at me. According to him, he had been suspicious of my movements ever since he told me to quit my job, and he was just thinking he was the one that was reading things wrong. But my affair had confirmed he wasn't reading things wrong. He ordered me to get out of his house before he did much more than just kicking my ass to the curb. You guys, I tried pleading with him. I begged and pleaded that I didn't know what got over me, and I told him the affair was an on and off thing. Apparently, he knew that it had been going on for over 2 months. My lover had confessed everything to him. I knelt and begged because, frankly, I didn't know where else to go that night except from back to the office. So when he threw me out and locked the door, I had to go to the office to sleep. This is where I find myself currently. For over a week, I slept at the office. I would wait until everyone goes home, then I would sneak in through the exit stairwell to sleep. My husband hadn't contacted me, and I was getting anxious. Then, out of the blue, my husband sent me a text that the only way he would allow me to come home was if I quit my job. The job had literally caused all this in the first place, and I wanted my husband back, so I handed in my resignation letter without collecting that month's pay, because it was a quick notice resignation. I did that for my husband to show how truly remorseful I was, but I didn't know he was planning more to come for me. I moved back in with my husband, and the relationship between us. Our dynamic was cold. I don't think he fully trusted me, but I became a stay-at-home wife while he goes to work. You wouldn't believe the warning he gave me when I came back. He told me I am going to be a housewife and carry his child while he fends for the family. I agreed because what other option did I have? None. We never did find our dynamic back. I didn't guess that my husband accepted me back to deal with me. He took me to his friends' parties and left me there, and he wouldn't talk to me when I somehow managed to get back into the house. I don't know. I always overlooked it because I thought I deserved it for what I had done. As long as he had forgiven me. This continues for more than a month. He'll drive off on me at the supermarket. He'll take me out and leave me at where we went to. I know you're wondering why I didn't leave him at the first sign of trouble. Well, because I couldn't. I didn't have any money to leave him. Where would I even begin? The money I was receiving as salary had been going into taking care of myself, and I didn't think about saving. This is why I couldn't leave him. I had nothing to start a new life with, and then I was pregnant. 1 month later, I overheard him talking to one of his friends, and on the line, he said, "She's going to get what's coming for her." By this time, I'd already told my husband that I was pregnant, and he hadn't even reacted one bit. He probably thought it was as a result of my affair, which it probably was. Remember when I said, my husband was planning more? My husband set me up. I didn't know how he did it, but I remember the police coming to our house and asking me why I had a huge sum of money in an account under my name. I told them I knew nothing about that, but they insisted I had to follow them to the polo station. It turned out that someone, because it was me, had taken company money and transferred it to an account that was created with my full name and my full signature, and there was only one person that I knew could do that. My husband. I tried to explain my case, but the police weren't hearing it and demanded I transfer the money back. The next day, my husband served me divorce papers, and his lawyer demanded I sign it that if I did, he, my husband, was going to get me out of the mess. I signed it because I was scared. I had never been in jail, and I didn't want to be because I had a baby in my womb. But after signing the papers, I never saw my husband again. I had to bail myself out of the mess he got me into with the remaining savings I had. That was how my husband planned out my downfall, and I had been foolish to fall for it. When I got back to the house, it was put up for sale, and I found my things in the garage with a note attached to it saying that it served me right and that I was stupid if I ever thought he would provide for me and my bastard baby after having an affair while married to him. I guess I was truly stupid.